Come April, there are going to be fewer people eligible for a federal program that helps them buy groceries. That's because of a change to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, better known as SNAP. Christina Maxwell, Director of Programs for the Food Bank of Western Massachusetts, said 10,000 Western Massachusetts residents will be impacted. But she's even more concerned about the impact of two other proposed changes. We discussed this in our studio.
We're really concerned about these proposed changes and some of the changes that are no longer proposed but that will actually be going into effect. They're targeting very vulnerable people in our communities and taking away food from people who really need the help putting that food on their table. So, this is really a demonization of poor people, and it's unnecessary. These changes are addressing problems that aren't really problems. And we're extremely concerned about how people are going to be able to make ends meet when they're no longer receiving the benefits that they're currently getting.
So you talked about proposed changes and changes. One of the changes that's coming, looks like in April, that's getting a lot of attention we'll talk about in a minute. But I want to talk about two of the proposed changes because you're concerned about the broader impacts of them. So the proposed change would be to remove the automatic enrollment that happens for families who are already qualifying for some certain government benefits. And then also how much people can deduct for utilities, things like heat and other changes. What do you think the impact of, let's start with the automatic enrollment first, will be?
Sure. So we're expecting that would impact about 100,000 households across the state of Massachusetts and would disenroll about 8,000 children from free school meals. And for a lot of kids, those are the meals that they get. Those school meals are incredibly important, so taking those away from them will be really detrimental.
But would it be taking it away, or can't people just sign up? It would just be an extra step, though.
It will be an extra step. It will be an extra burden on the schools. And for students whose family income falls within a certain range, they'll be asked to pay the reduced price meals. So they'll be getting a subsidy for their meals, but they won't be getting them for free. And for a lot of families, that's just prohibitively expensive, and they won't be able to afford that.
And related to the deduction piece, the deduction changing for heat, how many people do you think that will impact?
We expect that will impact around 200,000 households throughout the state. And that one will primarily affect probably people with disabilities and elderly people, simply because of the way that the math is done when people's benefits are being calculated. And right now what happens is the utilities that people pay for their housing are factored into that at a particular rate, and that can vary state by state. And what this proposal will do will standardize that rate across the country. So states that have particularly high heating or cooling costs, as Massachusetts does, will be penalized by that change.
And at this point, these two pieces in particular are still proposed.
That's right.
Do you have a sense of when it might be taken up and decided as to whether or not this will actually happen?
We don't really. Comment periods have closed for both of those, and the administration is required to read through all of the comments that they received, and they received hundreds of thousands of comments on each of those. So it depends how long they take to do that, and then when they choose to implement them. There could also be litigation that could delay the implementation as well, so we really just don't know.
So again, those two pieces proposed, but one piece that we do know will be happening, likely to roll out in April, is a change that would tighten work requirements for people. Explain what the change is, because I think that it's detailed and it's worth getting into.
So the change will impact people who are called able-bodied adults without dependents, or ABODs. So these are adults between the ages of 18 and 49 who don't have dependent children living with them in their home. And so this rule, the work requirement that you're referring to, has been in effect for a very long time. But states have been granted waivers for areas that have particularly high unemployment rates or people with particular barriers to employment. So states have had the flexibility to employ those waivers as they felt they needed to, and that's been the case for about 20 years. So the change is that those waivers are going away.
And the new percentage, as I understand it, would be 20% above the national unemployment. So that's not saying, 20% on top of, but 20% higher. So areas in this region would qualify for that if you look at Holyoke, for instance, because people, I think, look at that and say, unemployment's low already. How is this even possible?
Right. So right now, most of Hampden County is exempt from these work requirements and the northern Berkshire area. But both of those areas will be hit hard by this new rule because those exemptions will go away. And the fact of the matter is that we have very low unemployment rates across the state and across the country, but those are specific. Employment happens in specific geographic areas. So there are cities and towns and areas within our region that do not have low unemployment rates, where people really struggle to find work. A lot of people are looking for work, they want to work, but they simply can't find a job or can't find a job that has enough hours to qualify for the SNAP benefits.
I think one of the things that comes up, or I hear a lot, criticisms of the SNAP program is, well, I work a full-time job, this person doesn't work, and they get food handed to them. What would you say to someone who holds that opinion?
Well, the majority of people who receive SNAP who are able to work do work. People who are receiving SNAP who are not working are most often elders and children. So we don't expect them to work anyway. And a lot of other people are folks with disabilities or with other barriers to employment. And so then there are a portion of folks who could be working but who aren't. But those are the people who are facing real barriers, such as a lack of jobs or a lack of transportation very often to get to those jobs.
Which is a really big problem in Berkshire County.
It is.
Public transportation has been a challenge there for quite some time. And even here in Hampden County, the bus routes have changed quite a bit, and there's been discussion about fare changes. So transportation, we know, is a challenge here in Western Massachusetts.
It's a big problem. I mean, if you can't get to your job, you're going to get fired, right? There's just no way to manage that. So, and having a car is expensive. So a lot of people can't afford that, and they really rely on the bus system. And in our area, the bus system isn't comprehensive enough to really serve people's needs.
And when we talk about the SNAP benefit, the average benefit is about $197 per month, I believe, if I've done that research correctly. How far does that go for the average family who's receiving this benefit?
For the average family, that lasts about 2.5 weeks. So a lot of people who are on SNAP supplement their SNAP benefits by visiting food pantries or meal sites. And we see an increase in visits to those areas at the end of the month when people are starting to run out of their SNAP benefits.
And when you look at this work requirement, I've seen you say you think that it's going to impact about 10,000 people. 10,000 people will lose their benefit under this change in Western Massachusetts specifically, right? Before we were talking statewide numbers. Do you know food pantries in the region can absorb that?
It will be a challenge for sure. There are about 150 member agencies of the food bank that are across Western Mass. Many of them are located in Hampden County. Since this is the largest population area, this is where the majority of those places are located. And some of them will struggle to meet the increased need. The food bank will do what we can to support them, both with helping with their capacity and also with getting them the food that they need to be able to serve the people who come to their doors, but it will be an impact for sure.
One last question. I think SNAP benefits is something that's historically, over the years, been looked at up, it's down, there's cuts, there's proposed cuts. Can you put this into context for us, the current change that we talked about to the work requirement, and as well as those proposed changes, in terms of how hard this will hit the program compared to years past? Is it better, worse?
This will be a major hit to the program. If these 3 changes go into effect, that will be a really significant hit to the program to an extent that we haven't seen before. The SNAP program, contrary to a lot of popular belief, is very bipartisan. People really support the program on both sides of the aisle. And in the most recent Farm Bill, which was approved in 2018, it was approved in a bipartisan way, and Congress specifically addressed these questions and rejected them. rejected the proposals that are being made now. So the administration has found a way kind of around the will of Congress to implement these changes, but it's been made very clear that both parties support the SNAP program. And we have to keep in mind it supports individuals and families, but it also supports grocers and farmers in our areas. It has a really
People are
significant...
shopping there and spending
Right.
that money.
It has a really significant impact on local economies.